Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Hi, how is everyone doing? I hope you're doing well, inshallah. We're going to be starting the program. Again, thank you so much for showing up. It truly warms my heart to see so many people here, mashallah. This is such an important event. Basically, to remind people why we're here today, we're going to be talking about some of the biggest injustices that have occurred within our own community, within other Muslim communities in this country, since post 9/11. And it's been 20 years, subhanAllah. So thank you so much again for being here. I would also like to say that I just want to give a big thanks to MIC. I would love to give a big thanks to MIC for providing us with this amazing venue, being there throughout this entire process of planning this, truth be told, kind of last-minute event. I would also like to give a big thanks to our guest speaker, Attorney Gutierrez Abbas. We're so grateful to have you. Also, inshallah, in the next couple of minutes, Sheikh Yasser Fazaga will also be joining us. And the two staff attorneys from CARE DFW will also be joining us from Dallas, Texas, virtually through the magic of technology. So again, I want to give thanks to you guys, to MIC, and to our speakers for giving us their time, their dedication. So without further ado, let me just give a quick introduction. You've probably, through the posters and through some of the advertisement, you might have already seen who will be speaking today. So one of our first speakers from CARE DFW, her name is Attorney Marwa Albiali. She is a licensed attorney who advocates for underrepresented groups in Dallas, Texas. She's currently working on Dr. Afiya Siddiqui's case. Prior to starting her immigration and criminal law practice, Ms. Albiali dedicated herself to nonprofit work for several years, involving herself in a wide variety of legal issues affecting the freedom of Muslims in the US. She has also worked with many nonprofits, including the League of Women of New York and the New York Civil Liberties Union. So that is our first speaker for tonight, inshallah. Our next speaker, who's also coming in from CARE Dallas-Fort Worth, his name is Director Faizan Syed. Director Faizan Syed, he's the executive director of the Council of American Islamic Relations located in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. This is also known as CARE Texas DFW. CARE Texas DFW is one of the largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy chapters in the nation. He graduated with a degree in political science from Drake University in 2010, after which he became one of the youngest executive directors for CARE. Our next speaker, who will also be joining us shortly, inshallah, probably needs no introduction. MashaAllah, he's our Sheikh here at MIC, in our community as well, but Sheikh Yasser Fazaga. Sheikh Yasser Fazaga is a traditionally trained and experienced imam. He's also trained and clinically experienced, and he is a credentialed psychotherapist as well. Sheikh Fazaga has served as the religious leader of the Orange County Islamic Foundation in Mission Viejo, California. He also served as the director of the mental health department at Access California Social Services in Anaheim, California. Sheikh Fazaga has a bachelor's degree in Islamic Studies from the Institute of Islamic and Arabic Sciences and has a master's in marriage and family counseling from California State University of Long Beach. He has completed his second master's in Middle Eastern Studies at the University of Texas, Austin. And then our final speaker, Brother Gutierrez Abbas. Hey, what's up? Brother Gutierrez Abbas, or Attorney Gutierrez Abbas, he is a staff attorney for the Council of American Islamic Relations. He's helped pursue several court cases, one, for example, challenging Donald Trump's Muslim ban in 2017. He's also done a lot of amazing interviews, including one with NPR, in which he discussed how the ban was illegal and discriminatory. In 2016, Mr. Abbas worked directly on a lawsuit involving the FBI's terrorist screening database, also known as the Terrorist Watch List, during which he argued against the constitutionality of the program and advocated for substantial change for the program. And so that's Brother Gutierrez Abbas. So we'll be starting off with some questions for Mr. Gutierrez Abbas. And then once Sheikh Yasser joins us, I'll also be posing some questions to him. Also keep in mind, if I don't pose the questions that you guys really want to ask, we will be having a Q&A portion after we sort of have this discussion, inshallah. So my first question to you, Attorney Abbas, hey, is So we've heard a lot about sort of this upcoming Supreme Court case. So yeah, we've heard a lot about this upcoming Supreme Court case. And actually, since mashallah, Sheikh Yasser is also joining us, this is actually a two-part kind of question for both of you. So we would love to learn more of just sort of like what is going on. So we've heard about this case. So what is this case about? And what even is the Supreme Court? If you can give us sort of that legal insight. And Sheikh Yasser Fazaga, if you could give us a little bit more personal background about sort of the unjust experiences you've had and why you believe strongly in pursuing this case in the Supreme Court. So whoever is comfortable in taking that conversation first. So I'll give that over to you guys.
طيب, we can do that. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And thank you for joining us and thank you for visiting our community here. So very quickly, basically, 2006, there was an article that appeared in the local paper, the Orange County Register. I lived in Southern California back then. And in the article, there was an FBI agent that was quoted saying that the FBI is monitoring the Muslim community in Southern California and keeping an eye on the Muslim students in the UC system. We became very concerned. We reached out to the FBI along with CARE, other community organizations, and we had a town hall meeting with the FBI. During the town hall meeting, the assistant director, Stephen Tidwell, showed up in the meeting, and he assured our community that the FBI is not monitoring anyone, the FBI is not keeping an eye on anyone. And I happened to be a panelist on that meeting, and I felt that Stephen Tidwell was not answering the questions. As I've said before, that he spoke too much and said very little. So I confronted him in the meeting, and I wouldn't even call it a confrontation. I said, look, your agent said this, you are saying something else, and I think that question just emboldened the people who were present from that point on, and the questions just became tougher and tougher at that point. And we thought that was the end of it. Also during that time, a white male came to our masjid, said that he is from some Lebanese, Syrian, French background, Muslim roots, and that he is here to convert to Islam. And as you all know how we behave, we embraced that individual. People gave him hugs, 3 hugs, okay? And exchanging phone numbers with that individual. And remember that the Muslim community tends to pay more attention to Caucasian converts for a reason. Caucasian converts, when they convert, I mean, remember, we celebrate everybody that comes in, but within the Caucasian group, it's almost seen as a cultural treason that people are leaving and they're becoming Muslims. They're joining the others. So what happened is that we want to embrace people. We want to compensate them for the potential loss of social support that they have. And what we did, and this is not saying that we don't celebrate anybody else, but within, like, let's say African Americans, there is a sense of relatability. People know Muhammad Ali, they know Malcolm X, so people do not feel that they're leaving the community. They're still members from within the community. So in any case, so this person comes in, we embrace this individual, people offer to have breakfast with him, people offer to teach him salah, people offer to bring him over to their homes, and he goes around the community and he starts asking questions about jihad, lots of questions about jihad. And no matter what answer he's received from individuals, he was just not satisfied, and he insisted on somehow inciting violence. People became very concerned, reached out to CARE. CARE called the FBI. Hussam Ailoush, who is the executive director of CARE California, personally called the FBI. Spoke to Stephen Tidwell, the man that attended the town hall meeting, and said, Stephen, Mr. Tidwell, we have a terrorist in our midst. And Tidwell immediately said, tell me, who is it? And Hussam said, well, is this convert? And Tidwell immediately said, why don't you just call the local police department? Hussam said, you didn't even ask for his name. You didn't even ask who that person is. Just call the local police department. Call the local police department, and the local police department says, well, has he done anything? Oh no, we're just waiting for a terrorist to do something, right? Well, he hasn't done anything. So the community at that point decided that best thing to do is put a restraining order on this person. Became very angry, he was not happy with it, and we thought we got rid of him. 10 months later, that same individual, Craig Monteil, he shows up on TV, breaking news, calls for a press conference, saying that I am not a Muslim, I was never a Muslim, I was an informant that worked for the FBI. And as they say, he spilled the beans. And he spoke about who his handlers were. He spoke about what he was asked to do by the FBI, the kind of tactics that they employed. He would attend the salah. He would walk around the parking lot with a button, a camera on his button, taking an image of all the cars in the parking lot, taking pictures of the license plate numbers, pretend to be greeting the congregation as they walk into the masjid, only to find out that he was actually taking pictures of people as they came in, pretending that he has forgotten his keys. And remember, when you forget your keys, they put them in the imam's office. 30 days later, he comes to claim them, only to find out these were actually recording devices. And in the midst of this, he's supposed to go and find dirt on people as well, to use that against them. In his own words, he said that the FBI is 80% white males, and we don't have many agents working in minority communities. And the best thing to do is find something about that individual. Maybe they're having an affair, maybe they're cheating on their taxes, maybe their immigration papers. Use that against them so that you coerce them into becoming informants against their own communities. And you know how it is in our community. You meet a person, oh, mashallah, you're a new Muslim, you know, oh, mashallah, you're single too, let's introduce you to people. Introduce him to people. Ended up getting too close to some of our sisters. And when I say too close to some of our sisters. And the FBI just said, you go ahead and you just do whatever you need to do. Of course, he says all of this, but the FBI did not. Is the study getting too long?
Yep, no, it's good. Great.
Okay. So now what happens is that so far the FBI does not acknowledge that this guy is actually working for them. There was another case that was taking place in the community as well, Brother Niazi, and the FBI had to disclose that they got their information from an informant that was working in the community. Who was that informant? Craig Monteil. And that is how we made the connection that Craig Monteil, now the FBI is acknowledging that Craig Monteil is actually working for the FBI.
And a lawsuit happens, right? Out of this emerges a legal challenge, and now we're in the Supreme Court, and they're trying to, what the government is doing is they're saying that the case should be kicked out of court and eliminated in its entirety because of something called the state secrets privilege, which is the litigation equivalent of a cheat code that you enter into a video game to just automatically win. That's what it means. And they're using that to hide this illegal religion-based investigation, investigate this surveillance of the Muslim community in California. And how many times, this is the one that we know about, how many times have they done this? One author, Trevor Aronson, who's really tracked a lot of the FBI's work in the Muslim community, estimates that more than 10,000 people have been recruited by the FBI to serve as informants throughout the Muslim community. And the people that they recruit are people like Craig Monteil, dishonest criminals that have, in some cases, no better options than to lie, cheat, and steal for the FBI.
I love how you just took over my story, just like that. And so then what happened is, that's when we filed the lawsuit, like we said. And people usually ask, how did the name came, Fazaga versus FBI? Why was that? Supposedly, Craig Monteil was asked to keep an eye on the local masajid in the area. He would actually attend all 5 prayers. They actually had him rub his forehead so that he has the prayer mark. Had somebody teaching him Arabic, how to make certain phrases so that he appears to be a devout Muslim. In addition to surveilling the local mosques, he was also to keep an eye on 5 individuals. 5 individuals were myself, Ali Malik, and Yasser Abdul Rahim, and 2 other individuals who chose not to join our lawsuit. So that is how I personally got involved in this, because the FBI was also interested in that. And when Craig Monteil said, what was it about me? He said that the FBI felt disrespected that in the town hall meeting that I openly challenged them in front of people. In that meeting, Stephen Tidwell, I had the paper on me and I was reading him a quote from the agent. And this is on video, by the way. And Craig Monteil, that day, asked me and he said, are you calling me a liar? And I despise that question so much because it's very intimidating. You know, an official in his capacity is not supposed to be intimidating a citizen this way. It's like, he's scaring me into saying something. Are you calling me a liar? And I despise that question. And I really, really do. Because what it is, it's almost like a fear tactic used against people so that, you know what, you don't ask questions. You don't openly challenge. You don't question. And that is not acceptable. So anyways, we filed the lawsuit. The lawsuit initially gets rejected on the basis of national security, meaning that if we were to tell you what we are doing, then we would be revealing classified information that is detrimental to the well-being of the nation. So initially the court said, you know what, you have a point. Sorry guys, case dismissed. We filed an appeal. The Ninth Circuit looked into our appeal and they said, that court was actually wrong. You guys have a point. And now they send it back to the, lower court. And the government said, no, actually, we do have a point. We want the Supreme Court to take a look at it. And surprisingly, the Supreme Court said, well, let's go ahead and take a look at this case. So what will be happening on Monday is the argument between our lawyers, ACLU and CARE, from whom I am absolutely grateful for. Remember that this case took 15 years. And like my brother here said, this is just one of many stories out there. You know about the Muslims who were put on a no-fly list because they refused to become informants for the government. Just think about that, where the government is coercing citizens to become informants against their own will, against what they deem to be unethical practice. The government is pressuring them to do something like this. Wallahi, this is very scary. Not scary in the sense that we all have to be paranoid, but scary in the sense that this is really a government in a democratic society, that this is what they are. This is what they're doing. You had people who, and I can tell you this, in the capacity of a therapist, I'm extremely offended and very angry by what these people did. Craig Monteil said that they had placed listening devices in the masajid, in my office. I'm a therapist, man. When people come to therapy, that is when people become most vulnerable. They share with me the most intimate details of their lives because they feel safe, they feel unjudged. You give them positive, unconditional, positive regard, and you let them know that whatever they share with me is confidential. I do not say anything without having their prior consent, their prior written consent. And I take pride, alhamdulillah, I have never ever, wallahi, I have never ever violated the confidentiality of a single person that I met. Here you find out that the FBI was potentially listening to all the people that I've met. Do you know how potentially damaging that can be? Remember, the people don't necessarily have to be doing something wrong. Certain things are embarrassing. You don't want other people to know about it. The FBI was listening to my phone conversations live. There was one time, and I remember this so vividly, a brother called me up and he said, Sheikh, I'm really bothered by this Craig Monteil guy. He keeps asking about jihad and he keeps saying this and that. I said, brother, this man is either stupid or he's trying to get you in trouble. Either case, you need to stay away from him. Wallahi, as I am talking to him, he said, oh my God, this is him calling. Later on, Craig Monteil tells the story and he said, one time, Fazaga was talking to this community member, and Fazaga was persuading that guy to stay away from me. The FBI called me, and the FBI said that I need to bring this conversation to an end. Now, I thought that, the FBI would just be recording your conversations. The FBI was listening to my conversations live. Craig Monteil was paid $11,000 a month to do this. That is how much money they've invested in. I remember the day that we went to court, the ACLU lawyers looked at the lawyers present there for the government and for the agents, and the ACLU lawyer looked at me and he whispered and he said, this court is running at no less than $10,000 an hour. Like, that's how much money they are investing to violating a segment from within our community. It happens to be us right now. I think this lawsuit is really important, like Ali Malik said, not just to protect the Muslim community, but to protect the entire community, to protect our children, our grandchildren, to protect our neighbors, to protect the Muslims as well as the non-Muslims. And remember, this is how it all starts. Once you cement that a segment of the population can be treated like second-class citizens, then you can never put an end as to who's next. Today it's the Muslims. Who's next? By the way, whatever is happening right now happened to African Americans before. In the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, you just see the classified information that's just being recently released. Spying on Dr. King, spying on Malcolm X, spying on African American leaders. This is something that's always been happening. And sorry, my apologies, I'm talking too much.
So I just want to say about Sheikh Fazaga, about your perspective and your personal experience. You, mashallah, described it vividly, and I think everyone in the audience felt something while you described sort of how much you and your community members in California went through. And a lot of times throughout the everyday lives of Muslim Americans, to some degree, there's always some kind of day-to-day injustice we face. And mashallah, your expertise in mental health and in psychology, I would love to ask you sort of your opinion on maybe your own personal insight as well about how do you cope and how do we cope with what's going on? Because at times it can feel like a lot, and at times it can feel extremely isolating. And subhanAllah, you probably know this better than any of us. And so I know it's a very personal question, and I know, mashallah, this is sort of also where your expertise lies as well, about mental health and what we can do to cope with sort of those injustices, the things that we see on the news, the bullying, the isolation that we feel at times. So I'd love to hear your insight on that as well.
Yeah, so remember, every time somebody said, I've become really popular because of this case nowadays, by the way. You all know that you're talking to a celebrity right now, right? You all know that? Make sure you book an appointment from now on. So what happened is, every time somebody sees me, the first thing that they want to share with me is what? Their personal story with the FBI. This story is not the only story in the community. This is not the exception. This is actually the norm. Everywhere I went, somebody said, well, let me tell you about the time that the FBI visited with me. Let me tell you about the time that the FBI called me. I have had clients, and we're not talking about one or two. I have had clients who developed a state of paranoia when they were approached by the FBI. For stuff, brother, who refused, there was like these cases of people who said, my husband does not turn on the TV anymore because he believes that there are, bugs on the TV, especially with the smart TV, the ones that can turn on the camera. My husband does not turn on he's discontinued the internet at home. My husband is driving to the freeway. If a car follows him for more than half an hour, he would make a U-turn and come back home. My husband, he would pick up the phone and never say Assalamu alaikum because he believes it to be a phrase that would somehow trigger a listening or a recording device to come on. My husband has not had a job for the past 2 years because he believes everybody is monitoring them. My husband was not given his citizenship and he's been unable to go and see his family overseas. My husband, the government said that we're investigating you, so they froze his assets in the bank and we lost everything that we had. My husband had this business when the FBI walked in. The FBI has destroyed Muslims' lives. I'm not saying this. The article that came in the New York Times about 3 months ago, Aubrey, who was an African-American FBI agent, the title of the article is, I helped destroy people's lives. And he spoke about what the FBI has done to people. And like I said, my story just happened to be the story that got the attention. But this story, I really believe that Trevor's number, 10,000 Muslims, Craig Monteil said that in the 11 months that he's worked in Southern California, he helped recruit 47 informants for the FBI. That's a big number, man. Can you imagine if every one of them, every one of these jerks just did this in everywhere that they went? And that's a big number. But I can tell you this. Wallahi, mashallah, tabarakallah, I would say that really, really proud of our community. You know, initially what you do is that you use these scare tactics. And they initially work, by the way. They initially work, and you know what? People just, as we say in sociology, initially people doubt, they suspect, then they isolate. You know, you start looking around you, and that's how people react. It's like, are they for real? Are they not for real? Well, he's been asking these questions and these questions. And I can tell you that, unfortunately, for the past 15 years, every time I'm on the phone, every time I'm doing anything on the net, somebody is listening to this. Somebody is looking into that. And the problem when you tell this to some Muslims sometimes, well, they can listen all they want. I'm not doing anything wrong. No, the fact that they were listening without your permission, that is wrong. And you ought to be offended. It does not matter what you were talking about. People joke about it. Oh, if they listen, you know, it's all about me and my wife complaining to you. It's not funny. Wallahi, it's not funny. And you ought to be offended that this is potentially happening to us. So once that fear is gone, I would say that, alhamdulillah, I'm really proud of the community. The community became emboldened. The community does not take any, and I'm really, alhamdulillah, I would say that really the community has done well. There is always a room for improvement. So number one, the need of the hour is courage. A lot of courage. This is not the time to stay away. This is the time to stand up. Takes a lot of patience. Potentially, it takes a lot of sacrifice. And these are the three most important ingredients. Yeah, it can get really, really inconvenient at times, but hey, look, man, there is a price that people pay in order to protect their freedom. And I think that with these three elements, I think it's very, very crucial. I remember when I first found out that the FBI was supposedly, allegedly monitoring me, and you hear these stories about people saying that, the FBI like to ambush people after Fajr. They be waiting there, they wait for the man to go to Fajr prayers, and then they come to their families. And I remember, man, for a while, I just drive for Fajr, make a U-turn, and come back and see anybody go to my family or not. Nobody needs to be living this way. It's like that rap music said, that the rap song back from the 80s, singing about police brutality, speaking to the police, they said, you protect us from the criminals, but who's going to protect us from you? Who's going to protect us from you? And that is the sad part now. We're asking, who is going to protect us from you?
It's definitely us. No one else is going to do it for us. That's the hard truth of the matter, is that no one is going to do it for us but us. And it's because we are experts as a community in dealing with the FBI, because Muslims deal with the FBI all the time. We've been doing it for a while now. And we can pull from parts of our community, black Muslims that have been dealing with it for much, much longer than us. And so we can pool that collective experience, launch lawsuits that take 15 years, understand and educate each other about our rights, to not talk to the FBI if the FBI comes to your house. Do not invite the FBI over for tea. One FBI agent once told me that he loves talking to folks in the Muslim community. They're so hospitable, they always invite him in, always insist he eats. Another FBI agent once, so someone, you always can call, if an FBI agent calls you, I'd like you to give me a call or some other care attorney. My price is very good, it's very competitive, it's free. But, so someone called me and said the FBI contacted him, and so I called the FBI. And the first question I always ask, why do you want to talk to this person? And this guy said, I'm snooping around. He didn't say snooping, but that was the message he was saying. I'm, poking around, and I understand there's going to be spaces that this Muslim guy is going to be able to go into that I, as a non-Muslim FBI agent, can't get to. So, realizing that, I'm just going through the state employee directory and calling all the ones that appear Muslim to me. That was the basis of his contacts with his brother. These are the Obama years. These are the good times. All this stuff is the good times. We need to fight back against the terrible, horrible things that are being said to children in our community at schools. We need to make sure that we have religious liberty when we go to work, that brothers can have beards and women can wear hijab. But we also need to stay focused on a watch list that is more than 1 million names long, all of them Muslim, basically. An FBI agency that is the exact same as it's always been. Nothing's changed about it. I bet that guy got a promotion. I don't know what happened to him. Do you know what happened to him? And the only community that we can rely on is ourselves. That's it. That's all that we can do. I like our odds.
You remind me of an FBI agent. He once came to the masjid. Seriously. He came to the masjid.
I've never had that. I've never gotten that before. Okay.
And wallahi, this is what he said. He said, Imam, he said, I used to work in drugs and narcotics. And when I met a drug dealer, I knew I was talking to a drug dealer. But I've never met a terrorist before. So here I am. Can you imagine he said that to me. He's here at the masjid to learn in case he meets a terrorist, how would he figure out, what? He just met a terrorist.
A federal prosecutor once told me that Dar al-Hijra, which is a huge, gigantic mosque in the DC area, thousands and thousands of people, every Jummah, thousands and thousands of people. And he said that anybody that went to that mosque was suspicious because some guy, Al-Laki, many years ago, was an imam there, and he did something bad. So everybody that goes to the place that one person went to is guilty by association. Those are the people that have been in charge, that were in charge when Bush was president, stayed in charge in the Obama years. For the FBI, nothing much changed in the Trump years with regards to the Muslim community. In some ways, the watch list stayed the same, the no-fly list stayed the same, the surveillance continued. Biden's not talking about trying to alter these kinds of reforms. These are deep, generational challenges to the Muslim community, and it's going to be tough.
So there was a lot of important points that both of you made, mashallah. And so my following questions, because we kind of, mashallah, you've touched about like the legal process of what it's been like to get to the point where we're coming to on, I think, Monday, right? Inshallah.
Tomorrow, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Monday to sort of.
2 days from now.
Yeah, so, it's upcoming. And, but a lot of, even growing up, like, you learn about the system, you learn about, like, you sing the little songs to learn about what the legal system looks like and whatnot. But what a lot of people might be thinking is, what is the significance of a verdict from the Supreme Court about this case? What does that mean for our community in terms of where it's going to take us from here? And also, what is also the role of the Supreme Court in the country in general?
What would it mean to the community if the Supreme Court did something good for Muslims?
It would be easier to say if they don't, then they would cement the fact that Muslims are second-class citizens. This is what is at stake. The government can violate us. The government can surveil us. We don't need to know why. We will never be told why. And all we are told by the government is, trust us. We know what we're doing. This is what is at stake. So what we want is accountability, admittance that wrong has taken place. Any record that has been obtained illegally ought to be destroyed. I take this very personal for the protection of the clients, the people that I saw, and the fact that not the Muslims or any other group is going to be violated by the government in the way that the Muslim community has been violated.
But one positive thing that doesn't rely on the Supreme Court is that Sheikh Fazaga gets to talk about what happened to the community in California and educate folks. And that positive outcome does not rely on the group of people that looked at the Muslim ban and said, this looks fine. That's a very bad position for our community to be in, to be relying on folks that obviously, based on past performance, don't have our best interests at heart. And so while the Supreme Court is the final word on legal matters, they're not the final word on the role, the place of the Muslim community in this country. And it could be the case that the Muslim community learns through a series of court cases that there is a significant legal impediment to true equality in this country for Muslims. And it's better to know than to not know. And the fact that the Muslim community, really for the first time in the last couple of years, has been able to take cases, take terrible things that have happened in the community, and garner the expertise and the resources necessary to present it all, litigate it all. And so even if the Supreme Court does the wrong thing and gets rid of the case, at least we'll all know what happened, and we can try to do something about it.
I think that brings up a really important point that some folks might have heard growing up, or, when they came to this country, they might have felt this, where what is even the point of fighting when, if the system is potentially already against us? Because there is that narrative that does exist within our community, unfortunately, considering the history, right? So how would you respond to someone who sort of has that feeling or strongly believes in that narrative? And also on top of that, how do you respond to the, Muslim person who's, it's like, well, I'm doing fine. I'm doing great, right? Like, my life is great. How do you, there's kind of similar tones, but for different reasons. How do you respond to that kind of narrative?
Well, on the one hand, remember that a believer, by virtue of being a believer, is supposed to be optimistic. That is very important. You don't go into a fight thinking that you're losing or that you will lose. In the hadith, we're told that the Prophet ﷺ said, كان يحب الفأل في أمره كله. The Prophet, peace be upon him, used to be optimistic in all of his affairs. And historically speaking, I'm not sure what history people are looking into, but I'm looking into the African American history. Nobody would have believed that, we would have a black president. Doesn't matter whether good or bad, but the fact of the matter is, historically speaking, if you just relied on history, you would have never seen this coming. So to me, I really do not say that some people are going to have their mind set no matter what happens, but that does not mean that we do not fight. And also remember, if you think that your life is well now because you were born in this country and you are a citizen by birth, unlike people like myself who became citizens, as a result of being a refugee or an immigrant or whatever the case is, remember this idea of, number one is, no good is good if it's only good for you. The goodest of goods, the best of goods are shared goods. What good is your health if the people around you are not healthy? It further enhances your own health that people around you are healthy. What good is you being vaccinated if the people around you are not vaccinated? So that's very important, number one, to think that way. But if the fact that I am okay right now is going to justify my silence, well, next time it happens to you, somebody else will be saying, I am okay, and they're going to be silent the same way that you were silent, using the same justification that you used for your own silence. So to me, this approach I believe, is un-Islamic, because whenever we see injustice, there is something to be done about it. I love the words of Dr. King when he said that silence is the worst type of betrayal. So now is not the time to be silent. In the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said it more beautifully. الساكت عن الحق شيطان أخرس. A person who sees wrong or sees the truth and does not speak for it is nothing but a mute devil. And we do not want to promote that kind of attitude or perception in our community.
Okay, thank you so much for that response. I think it was, again, these conversations are so important, as you guys have been saying throughout this event, right? That this, inshallah, will, regardless of the verdict, that we're having this conversation is extremely important. I guess one of my follow-up questions is, so I've heard, it's kind of a two-parter. So the first part being, there was some mentionings when both of you were talking about the reality of the surveillance of our communities, right? So are we meant to keep our heads down and constantly live in fear? How do we navigate that reality? And on top of that, what can we do to support sort of what is going on, to support this conversation? What can we do in our lives to sort of support this movement?
I think that why don't you start? I'm sorry, I've lost track of my thought.
That's okay. And what happens is, like you said, these conversations are very, very important. Potentially, there are informants amongst us. May Allah forgive them if they repent. May Allah expose them if they don't. Okay? And what happens is, I believe that what the FBI did is very wicked, the idea of finding dirt on people. And I really, wallahi, believe that's very wicked. And I think that as a community, we need to learn that people who show up to the masjid, we don't show up because we're perfect. We show up here because we are trying to pursue a path of excellence, because no one is perfect. And remember that we all have, skeletons in our closets. So for people to snoop, to find that out, to share it with somebody, to potentially expose you, man, that to me is just absolutely the wickedest of the wicked. And if people are doing this in our midst, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroy them, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Wallahi, I don't take that lightly. I don't feel guilt for wishing them the most absolute evil. Man tatabba'a riyab al-nasi afsadahum, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. Whosoever snoops around to find out the shortcoming of people will ultimately corrupt them. And that is what happens. So remember, people are not here because they're perfect. I was talking to my students the other day. It was the first time ever seeing them face to face. And we've never had this experience. And they said, man, tell us about you. It's like, we've never seen you before. So I decided to introduce, many of our community members, we haven't had a chance for me to introduce myself to you. So I said to the students, by the way, I said, Wallahi, I do not know how many times I've been in court. Wallahi, I do not remember how many times I have had my license suspended. Wallahi, I don't remember how many times I have had my car impounded. I've been arrested before in more than one state. I know you're all thinking, oh my God. Did we have a background checkup before we hired this guy? And wallahi, I don't say this as means of pride. Wallahi, I'm not proud of that. But I just want people to know, look, man, you know what? Every seemingly sane person has history. And every sinner has a future. And our job as a community, away from these people who are here to snoop around us, is, look, man, we understand every seemingly sane person really does have history. I'm one of them. And every seemingly sinner has a future. Our job is to make a path for that future and overlook that history. That's what we do as a community. Not because we want to justify the wrong, that's not what we want to do. But the idea is that we want to celebrate and support one another. Jesse Jackson, one time, he said something really, really beautiful. He said, the only time that a man is allowed to look down upon another man is when they're trying to help them get up. That is the only time that we are allowed to look down upon each other. So the idea of the presence of informants, in that article, if you have not read the article, by the way, please do take a time to read it. The guy has been working with this reporter for 3 years, leaking classified information to tell him about what he's doing. And he would tell stories about informants from within the Muslim community who are trying to convince the FBI that they need to monitor these community members because they believe that they can get to something. And here is this agent convincing these Muslim informants that, look, man, enough is enough. We've given you a year and you have not brought us anything. And the guy said, no, just give me some more time. Wallahi, I'll get you something. Are you serious? Are you serious? Alhamdulillah. These are not the most in our community. These are, sick individuals. Like I said, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help them if they repent. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroy them if they don't, Ya Rabbil Alameen. But I am not going to live in fear and suspect everybody and monitor everybody. And no, that is not what we're about. It also helps to be transparent and clear. And I tell you a personal policy that I have. If I cannot say it in public, I don't say it in private. If I say it in private, I will absolutely say it in public. So you will not hear me say stuff privately that I will not say out loud. In our community, the Muslim community is commanded, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu la tatanajaw. You know, the Muslim community is commanded that, look, we don't hold secret councils. We don't have secrecy. Only time is if we're trying to amend relationships, if we are trying to help community members and we don't want to cause social embarrassment. This is the only time that we come and do that. Other than that, everything is out in the open.
And for what we can do, there's a million things that are not going well for the Muslim community. I just was in Little Rock for the past week where we were doing a trial about a bunch of Muslims in a maximum security prison that wanted to get together to pray Jummah, and the prison wasn't allowing them. And one of the arguments that Arkansas was making about why they shouldn't be allowed to is they kept on saying the Muslim community, we can't find a volunteer from the Muslim community to come and lead the prayer. So in court in Little Rock, they're blaming the Muslim community and justifying the Muslim community's inability to provide for Muslims in prisons and jails with their own inability to provide. And that's important. So if you don't want to do something about FBI surveillance, do something about our sisters and brothers in prisons and jails that can't always fast during Ramadan, or don't have a Quran or a prayer rug, or don't have a volunteer to teach them how to pray Salah after they've joined us. There's a lot of things to do, and just find some. I think it's the finding something that fulfills a community obligation. Contribute in some way to the infrastructure of the Muslim community. I was here at this masjid like 10 years ago, and I was expecting when I came here, I live in Chicago now, I work for the national office. I vaguely remembered the building, and I expected it to be that building. And you all have been extremely busy building a wonderful, beautiful masjid. You did, I mean, look what you all did. This is our infrastructure. This is the things that we are going to be able to use to advocate for ourselves, to push back against federal agencies that have spent 2 decades now focused on our community.
We really like to show off our masjid.
It's beautiful.
That was amazing. Thank you so much again, Sheikh Yasser and Brother Gutierrez, for sharing your insights, your thoughts. It was absolutely moving. And again, don't worry, we will have a Q&A portion. So if you guys have a question that you would love to ask either of them, we will do that, inshallah. But now I would like to transition it over to our 2 speakers coming from CARE DFW, attorney Marwa Albiali, and director Fazan Sayed. I think, inshallah, we should be trying to see if there's someone setting that up, inshallah. But basically, while that is being set up, I hope, I would like to give some quick background because we were talking about the Supreme Court case, and this is just, as Brother Gutierrez was saying, this is just one example out of many things that have happened within our community of injustices. Another example of a horrendous injustice which has occurred is against Dr. Afiya Siddiqui. She's currently serving an 86-year sentence in a Fort Worth military prison for a crime she did not commit. And again, as I mentioned in the beginning, Sister Marwa, she is Dr. Afiya's attorney in CARE DFW, is representing her, inshallah, and they're doing a lot of amazing work as well. Okay, so I see we're gonna get that set up, inshallah. We're gonna beam them through the internet. Clearly, I wasn't like a technology major in college, but again, these are 2 examples of major injustices. A lot of people haven't heard of Dr. Afiya, and a lot of people might have not have heard of this Supreme Court case coming up, and that's the unfortunate reality, right? Is that these are such important issues, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't know. And so something that I truly, truly encourage after this event, inshallah, is you share with your friends and family what's going on, that you share these injustices, and that, as Brother Gutierrez was saying, and as Sheikh Yasser was saying, as Muslims, as Muslim Americans, that it's our duty as people of our religion, people in our community, to stand up for one another. So I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts before we transition it over to CARE DFW. And I think, are we good to go? Is that going to awesome? Okay, so this is Director Faizan Syed. Assalamu alaikum, Director Faizan Syed. Hope you're doing well, inshallah. I just realized there's a screen in front of me, so I was trying to do a backhand wave. Anyways, so thank you so much for joining us here today. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions to sort of get the conversation going, inshallah. And these questions are for both you and Sister Marwa. So again, if she wants to jump in or if you want to jump in, please feel free to do so. So the first question is, who is Dr. Afiya? What is her story?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين. The case of Dr. Afiya Siddiqui is one of the most injustice cases here in the United States. It is a case involving a mother of three who got a master's degree and a PhD from Brandeis University in neuroscience. She is a lady that all of us would be proud to call our mothers. Or if we have daughters, we would want them to be able to come to the United States to get an education and to make a life for themselves. However, during the dark days of the so-called war on terror, Dr. Afiya Siddiqui came to the United States. She studied, she got her PhD, she got married, she had children, and everything seemed to be going right. However, things happened that she got divorced from her husband and she was wound up back in Pakistan. And basically in 2003, Dr. Afiya Siddiqui, along with her children, were going to visit her uncle while in Pakistan when basically she was kidnapped and abducted. During that time, we have no idea where she was for the next 5 years, where she was disappeared for that time. But what Dr. Afiya Siddiqui says, and we believe her, is that she was basically put into United States black sites for nearly 5 years, along with the kids that she had at that time. In 2008, Dr. Afiya Siddiqui reappeared in really the middle of nowhere, Afghanistan, in a town called Ghazni, Afghanistan, with herself and her oldest son. When she wound up in this area, she got arrested because she didn't speak any of the local languages. It was really odd how she even wound up there. And it happened that even the governor of Ghazni, Afghanistan, expected her to be there, which is very odd. To make a long story short, Dr. Afiya goes into a local jail in Ghazni, Afghanistan, when 4 U.S. soldiers and 2 FBI agents come into this small room. What happens next, according to sort of court records and what we have, is one of the soldiers, out of quote-unquote respect for the Afghan culture, puts a fully loaded M4 rifle on the ground right in front of the bed where Dr. Afiya Siddiqui is staying, and there's a curtain kind of separating the two of them from there. Now, of course, I was in ROTC for 2 years, and one of the basic things they teach you is don't put a fully loaded weapon on the ground, especially when there's other Afghan civilians around. According to U.S. soldiers, they claim that Dr. Afiya Siddiqui grabbed this M4 rifle. She was 5'2", about 90 pounds, a Pakistani mother of 3-year-old, and she somehow managed to pick up this M4 rifle, shoot it, quote, several times, even though there was no gun residue on her hand, there's no gun residue on her clothing, there's no fingerprints on the gun, and the bullets that she apparently shot just seemed to magically disappear in thin air. None of the bullets were recovered, nor the shell casing were recovered. And sort of the silliness in this case, the U.S. soldiers and the FBI said, oh, the Afghans took the shell casing and we couldn't recover them. Just odd stuff. The only person that was shot in that exchange was Dr. Afiya Siddiqui. She was shot multiple times and she had to be airlifted to Bagram Hospital where she received treatment at that time. After that, what ended up happening is that she somehow got renditioned back to the United States, even though Dr. Afiya is a Pakistani national, she's a foreign national. It is really illegal for her to be renditioned to the U.S., but somehow she was brought to this country. She was then given a so-called trial in New York City. Of course, after this was during the dark days of September 11th, when there was a lot of anti-Muslim animosity, and of course, people in New York were the ones that witnessed the Twin Towers collapsing. During this trial, initially Dr. Afiya was deemed as unfit to stand trial, but she was basically forced to stand trial anyway. She repeatedly said that she did not want the legal attorneys that were given to her, but she was forced to have these attorneys as well. In fact, the attorneys that were paid and were working for Dr. Afiya's case were being paid by the Pakistani government. The Pakistani government, who was responsible for the kidnapping and the renditioning of Dr. Afiya from Pakistan to Afghanistan, and were complicit in all this, and probably the reason she even got arrested and was in this predicament, they paid her attorneys basically $2 million. And that's obviously a clear conflict of interest, but either way, she was forced to have these attorneys. During this trial, there was a lot of really weird, suspicious stuff happening. One of the most suspicious, odd situations is that there is a man. Again, so this is Dr. Afiya's case. This is New York City. There's security. This is a well-secure courtroom. But somehow a guy who's very stereotypical Arab-looking comes in there wearing sunglasses, and he basically goes into the courtroom and does this to the jurors, like what makes like a little gun symbol. And two of the jurors get so frightened by this that they're basically excused from the jury pool. But yet this guy's allowed to come back in a second time, and this person's never like caught or kicked out of the courtroom or anything like that. Long story short, Dr. Afiya Siddiqui, despite the lack of evidence, despite these four, military personnel and these two FBI agents, all of them having ridiculous, contradictory eyewitness statements that really belong more in a bad action movie like Die Hard than the courtroom, somehow she was convicted by that jury of, being guilty on all of these counts. Now, okay, if that wasn't bad enough, the judge, who has discretion in this case, he decides to get every one of the counts that she was found guilty of and have her serve them basically one after the other. So what is typically, even if Dr. Afiya Siddiqui is quote unquote guilty of these crimes, quote unquote of trying to shoot U.S. soldiers and things like that, she was given an 86-year prison sentence because she was given the maximum sentence for each of those crimes, and they were served one after the other. Basically, she was given death behind bars for what happened. What really is awful about Dr. Afiya's case is that the media at this time, which is again, this is during the dark days of September 11th, they don't need any excuse or evidence or reason to call you and label you a terrorist or label you anything like this. In fact, Dr. Afiya was repeatedly put by the New York, which is an extremely conservative newspaper in New York, as quote unquote Lady Al-Qaeda. And this is absolutely ridiculous because in court she was never charged for terrorism. There was no evidence that she had any links to any terrorist organization or groups, but once the New Yorker said this, then that label stuck, and even to this day, she's still labeled in this way. Dr. Afiya Siddiqui has now been in jail for nearly 18 years, 13 years physically in jail after she basically was tried and sentenced, but then also including the 5 years when she disappeared in Pakistan, just trying to visit her uncle with her children as well. This case is one of the greatest cases of injustice. It is a case in which the United States continues to punish this woman for basically a time in our history where hundreds, if not thousands of people were treated the same way Dr. Afiya was. If you remember, in Guantanamo Bay, over 900 and almost 1,000 prisoners were put into Guantanamo Bay. Almost all of them were released without ever being charged of a crime, except for 30, I think, are still left there. Why? Because during this time, the U.S. was basically in a revenge mode, trying to take revenge for the attacks of September 11th. Our so-called intelligence agencies had no idea what they were doing, and they were basically buying people around the world. Dr. Afiya is just one example of hundreds, if not thousands, of men, children, women who were basically bought and sold by countries to the United States, and the people that sold them got paid tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, just for whatever links that they have. This is a case that our office, along with the Albiali law practice, alhamdulillah, is taking on, and we are dedicated to seeing the release of Dr. Afiya Siddiqui so she can return back home to her country of origin, to not be serving this 86-year prison sentence that's completely bogus in our opinion, and for her to be able to return back home and for this injustice to really end in the United States.
Mashallah, CARE DFW is dedicated to getting her released one day, inshallah, and back home to her family. And so my question for you is, what exactly is that work that you guys are doing, and how can our community help support that work?
There's a lot that all of us can do. Dr. Afiya's case is very unique because unlike, unfortunately, many other cases like Jamil Al-Amin and others, whose situation is quite challenging to really get them out of jail, To get Dr. Afiya Siddiqui out of jail, there are multiple avenues. One of the simplest avenues that we're pursuing is a treaty, basically where prisoners can serve their sentences abroad. I'll get the specific name of the treaty in a moment. That's what we're trying to push forward. And the unique thing about that is that because Dr. Afiya Siddiqui is not a U.S. citizen, she is a Pakistani national, the nation of Pakistan has the ability to sign onto this treaty and bring Dr. Afiya Siddiqui home. We assume, obviously, when she comes home, she would obviously not have to serve her 86-year prison sentence. And this is not America's doing. This is actually in the wheelhouse of the Pakistani government that is unfortunately choosing to this day to not sign on to that treaty and to not have Dr. Afiya Siddiqui returned. It is in that light that our office is working with the Albiali law practice, Marwa Albiali, particularly, who is the direct attorney representing Dr. Afiya Siddiqui, who's one of only 2 people in the whole world that has physical access to see Dr. Afiya, to talk to her, and to really represent her in the right way that needs to be done. What we're going to do is we are doing a campaign here in the United States, which involves doing an advocacy day that's coming up very soon on November the 14th to the 16th. Our goal is to meet congressional officials, senators, in order to educate them about Dr. Afiya's plight and to build awareness in Congress and to put pressure from America to the Pakistani government to get her released, inshallah. Beyond that, we're also trying to do a campaign, hopefully in Pakistan in the near future, where we can go and really advocate for Dr. Afiya in that nation. So that way, Prime Minister Imran Khan, along with his cabinet, again, it is completely up to them. If they wanted Dr. Afiya Siddiqui to be returned home, all they have to do is sign to this treaty, and then Dr. Afiya would basically be sent back to their nation. We're going to put pressure in America, and we're going to put pressure in Pakistan, and we're going to do it during strategic times to make sure that Dr. Afiya Siddiqui, inshallah, is able to be returned home. Hopefully by Ramadan of 2022 is our goal.
I know that as well, on top of meeting with congressional members and planning the advocacy day, the lobbying day for Dr. Afiya, and the campaign that you guys are hoping to do in Pakistan with the Pakistani community, you guys are also forming a petition. And I wanted to make note of that because some of you guys where you're sitting, you might have the documents with you. We also have those petitions located outside. So please fill those out, and after the event, you can bring those back to me or one of our volunteers. Inshallah, I just wanted to put that out there. But you mentioned, mashallah, a lot of information about this case. And you also mentioned the media coverage on Dr. Afiya. And when we Google Dr. Afiya, the first thing that comes up is that she's the lady of Al-Qaeda, right? And there's so much misinformation about her story. So where can we go to learn the true story? And how do we find that?
Well, inshallah, there's a lot of great resources out there. We have a website that we've created specifically for this campaign called freedrafia.org. And if you visit freedrafia.org, on that website, you'll be able to find a lot of information about her case, her timeline, other advocacy opportunities that are available, petitions you can sign, and other ways that you can really get involved if your goal is to see Dr. Afiya Siddiqui free. So that's a really great resource, but beyond that, there's also a lot of really good news articles that have been done about Dr. Afiya Siddiqui that now are coming up, and of course you can go online and educate yourself on her particular case. The great thing is that the actual court records of her initial case are all public information. They're available. We actually have a lot of these resources on our website as well as freedrafia.org. So I encourage anybody who's interested in learning more to visit that website. You'll have talking points, you'll have information about the case, and a lot of other really positive information that I think can really help anybody who's interested in learning more about Dr. Afiya and how to get her free.
That's great. That's perfect. And so, inshallah, definitely visit that website, freedrafia.org, to learn more about her story. Can you explain a little bit more about the Advocacy Day and what that will look like? Because for a lot of Muslims, lobbying or speaking to congressional members is a very new sort of experience. So what would that look like if someone did sign up for the Advocacy Day?
If you sign for the Advocacy Day, what will end up happening is that we have 2 options. You can participate in person by flying to Washington, D.C., meeting us there, walking to congressional offices there, and holding these one-on-one meetings with either the congressional individual or their staff members. Our goal is to really build public support for Dr. Afiya Siddiqui. We're going to be targeting congressional offices all across the country. But then there's also an actual caucus for Pakistan. It's called the Pakistani Caucus. And these are congressional offices that includes people like Andre Carson and others who actively are part of a caucus that directly work with affairs related to Pakistan and American relations. So these are some of the members that we want to target, and we're going to be doing multiple advocacy days throughout the year. We also have a virtual option that you can participate in from the comfort of your home, where you just log onto a computer. At a certain time, you'll be connected with their office, and then you can speak to them and really share the passion that you have for Dr. Afiya's case, calling for the United States government to get her released by putting pressure on the Pakistani government, and for really this pillar of the oppression that existed during the time of the so-called war on terror to come to a conclusion and to an end. Beyond that, we also have opportunities where people can, on that website, or even during the advocacy days, we have created a petition online, and if you sign that petition, we're actually going to print that petition out, segregated based on the congressional location. And as we meet congressional officers, we're actually going to drop off the names and addresses of those people that support Dr. Afiya to the actual congressional members, for them to be aware that there's a lot of support for Dr. Afiya's case inside their local districts. So this is sort of what you can expect. The morning of, we're going to do a press conference to really re-educate the population that Marwa Albiali is the attorney representing Dr. Afiya Siddiqui. Us, along with a large coalition, are working to get her free, inshallah, by Ramadan of next year. And that this is an ongoing injustice that needs to really be addressed. So that's a little bit about actual advocacy day and what it will entail.
Thank you so much for that response. I think, mashallah, you kind of covered all the questions I had planned to ask. So for CARE DFW and the work you guys are doing. So just for the sake of time, because we are running low, I want to open up the floor for you guys to ask the questions that you really want to ask. I'm going to turn over this mic to our volunteer, Mariam. And I don't know if, there she is. So if you do have a question, you can just raise your hand for any of their speakers. So yes, so.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming and speaking. I have a question and a comment and a thought at the same time. Do you think that the conversation that we had here, if we do it at law school campuses, would that help? And I have a long list of reasons for saying that, and I'll give you only 2 or 3. Number 1 is that I am in law school, and number 2,
come intern for CARE. It'll be great.
Yeah, sure, inshallah. And number 2 is that when we look at the leadership of this country, whether it's senators, your Congress members, presidents, vice presidents, a heavy majority of them go to law school. Like about 90% of the US Congress members, senators, they have been to law school or they have been lawyers at some point in their lives. 60% of the US presidents, they have been lawyers. Our current vice president, Kamala Harris, she's a lawyer. Mike Pence was a lawyer. So why don't we take these conversations?
I think that's a great, wonderful idea. Some of those conversations are happening in law school, but we are blessed right now in this very moment with the president of the National Association of Muslim Lawyers, Sarah Siddiqui.
Oh.
So there are people in this room already.
Who is that?
Sarah Siddiqui, right there. So
So
she's the president.
Okay,
She, controls all the levers. So, and there's a National Muslim Law Students Association, and if there isn't one at your law school, you should start one. That is like a concrete thing that, folks can do. Because the FBI doesn't want us talking to each other, which means that we should definitely be talking to each other.
Right. Actually, I have brought this up to imams and some board members as well. And I did start a Muslim Bar Association here in Memphis. And I have been dying to, bring in a speaker, and I couldn't find one. So I was very excited to see you guys.
Give me a call. Give Faizan a call. He'll come right out.
Yeah, inshallah, absolutely. And we can do a presentation, Dr. Afiya Siddiqui and stuff. And there are lots of other student organizations on campuses, like, minority groups, and we can have like a group panel along with them, and we can educate them. Because we have heard a lot in law school that, these Muslims and all these, they come from other countries and they're getting better jobs and they have a better standard of living, but they don't know our suffering.
Right.
So if we reach out to them, and if not today, tomorrow, and 10 years down the line, these people will be, leaders of the nation, and they will know our suffering. So that will make a whole lot of difference.
Inshallah.
That's a suggestion. Please consider that and come back to Memphis, and I'll have you as a speaker.
Inshallah. Absolutely.
Assalamu alaikum. So I wanted to ask a question more pertaining to the facts of Sheikh Yasser's case, and in some instance to Dr. Afiya's case as well. Your experience being a trial attorney, how often do you find that public opinion changes the verdict, or like what's the margin of change between like the people who are responsible for saying this is not unconstitutional or this is constitutional, the FBI were well within their right or they weren't within their right, based off of the public opinion of the people that like of our communities and things like that?
They're very sensitive. They're the federal judges who it's in their job protection is in the Constitution. It's like a contract that requires 2/3 of the states to amend. So it's a job protection. So they don't have to worry about their job. So they really think about what's going on. They read the news, and they always are following media about their cases. That's just that's human nature, and they do that. And so for a lot of these deeply entrenched national security programs, we can't put our eggs in like a single case basket, because any single case is the most likely outcome of any single civil rights case is a complete loss. That's the most, by probability, it's the most likely outcome. So you want to make a cultural contribution in addition to the litigation that you're filing. And that is a lot more lasting than any kind of court case. Brown v. Board of Education didn't desegregate schools. Schools are just about as segregated as they were 60, 70 years ago. That does not mean that Brown versus Board of Education is not among the most important opinions that the Supreme Court ever issued, because it emboldened people. If these folks that I've never met, all white, not from my community, if they think I'm equal, then I'm going to fight for equality as well. And so it can have that kind of cultural impact that does not rely on a federal judge to agree with us.
Salam alaikum. I know there's always a common saying that all politics is local. And if you would ask now maybe the general community here, like, who is your representative? Who's your state representative? Who's in the Board of Education for your area, or who's the city board representative and all that? I would say most of us wouldn't know who represents them. And I think there should be a dire projection within really the Muslim community to start learning more about involvement in the civic activities and civic duties, the responsibilities. And if I compare our community to the LGBTQ, for example, because when I came to this country, there used to be a joke around, the LGBTQ. There wasn't even LGBTQ. Nobody would mention. But right now, probably as you heard, is that they just changed the Massachusetts. They changed the laws to allow polyandry. I don't know if you knew that. Yeah, that was just 3 days ago. So they're going from, let's say, from the 70s to now, these 2010, 2020, and they immense such a great power. We as Muslims, we are not really coming together and trying to learn, and also from Dr. King and the civil rights movement, we are not really coming together and cementing our relationship with each other to be as one body and work as one body and be like a beehive. If something like Afiya Siddiqui, like Jamil Amin, and I know he mentioned Jamil Amin, and probably a lot of brothers here and sisters don't know the case of Jamil Amin, which is South, this is why I'm saying South, in Mississippi and Georgia. And right after September 11th, there was the Patriot Act, and there was before it, the Muslims actually the one who voted for Bush because of the Secret Act and all of these things. So we are very, very, I don't want to say dumbfounded when it comes to politics, and we don't get really involved in politics. So should we as a community, and I'm talking really as a community, as a Muslim community, be more involved in civic activities and learn more about how this country runs and what is the meaning of all politics is local? Should we be doing that? And should we have policies and that and programs for that?
I think that's a brilliant point, Dr. Nabil, and you're right. All politics are local. And I think this is more of the reflection, with all due respect to my brothers and sisters here, this is really more of the immigrant attitude and mentality. Because to us, politics is about foreign policy. What do these people think about this state or that situation or this situation? Not paying attention that the local politics is what is going to impact our center, what our kids are taught at school, how our local policies are going to impact us, especially when it comes to the Board of Education and who is deciding what our kids are taught. And I don't think that we are at the fork where we need to choose this or that, but I think that this collective effort, that we are looking to nationally what is going on, but we must pay closer attention to what is happening in our own immediate vicinity. That saying of, you know what, differentiate in between the circle of your influence and the circle of your concern. The circle of our concern is the entire globe, but the circle of our influence are immediately where we are able to vote, get who's in, who's out, making these types of relationships. So I would say 100% agree with that.
Walking into the masjid, it sounds like you all have been doing a lot of civic engagement. I remember Friendship Park and hearing from the leader of the Heart Song Church and a brother from this community talking about the vision of Friendship Park and the relationship between this masjid and the church. And it was really beautiful. It was really impressive. And it's not what happens always everywhere in every community. And, mashallah, this community has so much, it takes more than resources to build a masjid like this. It takes a thick network of relationships in a community, and that is useful for making sure there's a masala, building a community center and a mosque, and it's the same thing can be brought to bear on the political process as well. And so someone from this community, is there a Muslim on the Memphis City Council? Is there, or any city council? There's a sister I know, Nashville, right? Is a Muslim sister there. So run for office, somebody. Maybe there's like a sanitation commissioner, then you run for lieutenant governor in 4 years. And then congratulations. Yeah. That's great. Ilhan Omar was on the cover of Time magazine like 5 years ago because she was a Muslim sister that was elected a state lawmaker. Did you know that a Muslim sister was elected to the New York City Council like last week? Okay, many of us. But I mean, there was other Muslims elected to state legislatures. You can't keep up anymore. It's too many, and that's, alhamdulillah, that's a huge blessing and such great progress in a few years.
The entire now city.
Yeah, first mayor of Dearborn. Yeah, absolutely.
The entire city council member of the city of Hamtramck, all 6 members are Muslims now.
Assalamu alaikum. Regarding our Sheikh Fazaga's case before the Supreme Court, if it is decided in our favor, in what specific concrete ways would it limit the FBI's ability to surveil our communities?
That's a really complicated question, and it's not. So if the Supreme Court sides with Sheikh Fazaga, it doesn't end the case. One of the things that is being asked for is there's the state secrets privilege. That's the cheat code that just gets rid of a case whenever the government wants. And then there's this law that ostensibly, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, that ostensibly was passed after Nixon turned the entire kind of foreign surveillance apparatus inward. And so Congress passed the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act to try to regulate that. And it established like a secret review process in addition to a secret court. And so one of the things that's being asked for at the Supreme Court level is for the Supreme Court to send the case back down to the district court judge to give that district court access to secret evidence that he can tell no person about, not the lawyers, not the folks that brought the lawsuit, not Sheikh, nobody. Just the judge in a room by himself with secret documents that he'll never have to explain to anybody else. And then he looks at it and makes a decision about whether or not the FBI has violated the Constitution. Maybe that person does something extremely brave and looks at the secret documents that no one else will ever see and says, based on the secret documents, obviously the FBI, because they base their investigation on the religious identity of an entire community, they violated the Constitution. But also, and more likely, just as a statistical matter, usually in situations like this, even if the Supreme Court sends it back, the district court has a lot of opportunity to not do the right thing. And that's, not good.
Alaikum. My question is, can you please guide us to how much progress has been made on Dr. Afiya Siddiqui's case? And if we sign this petition, how optimistic are you that how close are we to freeing her?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Walaikum salam.
I really enjoyed the panel earlier, and mashallah, the great work that CARE is doing. Keep going. And I'm not sure what I just missed. My computer froze earlier. So if you could let me know what the last question was, or what kind of information you're looking for from me.
Of course. So we just had a sister in the audience ask. It's a two-part question. One is what progress has been made on Dr. Afiya's case? And the second part of the question being how exactly will signing this petition or being a part of Advocacy Day help, inshallah, in her release?
So Dr. Afiya's case, I believe, is not going to be won through the legal system. It's going to be won through the advocacy, particularly of the Muslim community. What's happened in her case, and I heard the part where Faizan spoke earlier, is she has been sentenced to 86 years. It's very difficult to overturn a federal criminal conviction. Our judicial system emphasizes finality. So they don't like giving people who've had a trial another bite at the apple. So it really needs the support and advocacy of the Muslim community. A lot of people don't really understand the details of her case. And her case, even though there has been reporting and coverage on it in the media, it hasn't been in very much detail or depth, most of the articles, and most of the people don't really know who she is and what happened to her. So it's essential that our community stand up, start talking with the members of Congress, start through, and also advocate by signing these petitions, letting other people know what happened to Dr. Afiya Siddiqui. Dr. Afiya Siddiqui is in a prison here in Fort Worth, Texas, and she's very much alive and well, and she needs to get out. And she can only do that with the support of the Muslim community.
Marwa, can you talk about the attack that happened to Dr. Afiya on July 30th?
Okay, so what happened is I visit Dr. Afiya on a fairly regular basis. I try to do it at least once a month. I've been her attorney since January of 2021. And what happened is when I went to her on August 4th, I saw Dr. Afiya. She had been attacked by another inmate. She had burns right here around both of her eyes. And it was because this inmate, it was like, I think right when they were returning from their rec period. So Dr. Afiya had returned to her cell, and this inmate came barging in, smashed a cup of hot liquid into Dr. Afiya's face. The burns are all around here. She had, when I saw her the first time, a piece of paper with toothpaste under her cheek. She had a scar right here across her eye. She had a ginormous bruise that was visible on her arm. And she told me she had other bruises on her body. Because what happened is after this inmate smashed the cup of hot liquid into her face, she went into a fetal position, and then in that position, that inmate kept hitting her. I know it was so severe that Dr. Afiya had to be taken out of this cell in a wheelchair. And then an investigation was conducted by the prison. But as prisons do, they stuck her actually in solitary confinement. And then we had, alhamdulillah, a protest that was done here outside of the prison in Fort Worth, Texas. And after a period of time, she was released, and she's currently she's returned back to her normal cell, and she has access to commissary once again. And alhamdulillah, she is doing better. There is still scars from that attack, though.
SubhanAllah, no, that's really sad to hear. I know one of the campaigns that we've started is the I Am Afiya campaign, which is on Fridays. We encourage you to wear yellow. Tell us about that campaign and how everybody can get involved in that.
So as you can see, whenever I speak about Dr. Afiya, I try to wear yellow. Sister Nagila Morales actually came up with this idea based on a video that's available online of Dr. Afiya speaking. This was years ago. I believe she was approximately 19 years old when she was at the University of Houston. And so she was wearing this yellow outfit. So we want to start wearing yellow every Friday, inshallah, whether it's a scarf or a kufiyya or whatever, just to remember Dr. Afiya and to say that, you know, we haven't forgotten our sister. We know that she's there, and we're going to all do our best to advocate for her. Because I said earlier, she's going to get out with the advocacy of the Muslim community and the community at large, just humanity at large, because it is a great injustice what has happened to her. And Faizan went over earlier, and it was this like post 9/11 hysteria. And actually, even going to what happened to Sheikh Yasser, it did not start after 9/11. It increased after 9/11, the informants within our community and the non-stop watching and that sort of thing. But there was organizations, other than the government, private organizations who also monitored the Muslim community. And we believe that may be the case in Dr. Afiya's as well, because there is a particular individual named Evan Coleman who has been associated with Dr. Afiya's case. And I don't know the extent of his involvement or the extent of these other private organizations' involvement, but we do know that the community that she was living in at the time, Boston, Massachusetts, was heavily surveilled and heavily monitored by not only government, I don't know the extent of government pre 9/11, but private organizations.
MashaAllah, outstanding. The last thing I'll say about Dr. Afiya Siddiqui's case is to echo what Marwa said. We can release Dr. Afiya Siddiqui. Dr. Afiya Siddiqui can be returned home. It requires an advocacy campaign in the United States and in Pakistan. I know many of you are Pakistani like myself. Many of you have donated to build hospitals in Pakistan, or you donate to build that dam in Pakistan, or you know people in the Imran Khan government. You need to use those dollars you've given and that influence that you have to call on the Pakistani government to sign the serving sentences abroad, and the Pakistani government is the one that has the power to release her. If you've ever given a penny for any cause in Pakistan, if you have family in Pakistan, if you have any relatives or any government links, you need to use your voice in that government to get her released, because it is really by and large Pakistan's ability to do that. The second thing is, if anybody specifically wants to support our effort for Dr. Afiya Siddiqui, you can visit freedrafia.org. There you can also sign petitions, join these different campaigns, but also donate and contribute. Like we mentioned, Marwa Albiali is the only attorney, one of only 2 people in the world that can actually physically see Dr. Afiya. We would not know that Dr. Afiya was viciously attacked unless Marwa visited her. If you want to support Dr. Afiya's legal case, if you want to support her advocacy case, and you want to support our efforts to get her released, visit freedrafia.org, and of course support that effort as well, because this is going to be an effort that will inshallah result in her freedom. So this is the piece of advice that I have. Don't think that it's just the United States government that's keeping her in jail. That is not completely accurate. It is really our effort to persuade America, and more so to persuade Pakistan to do the right thing to get Dr. Afiya Siddiqui home. And I know even in my community here in St. Louis, when Imran Khan was elected president, we had the ambassador come to my masjid in St. Louis, and they did a big fundraiser for the dam that was in Pakistan. Since that time, I've contacted all of those doctors and all those people that contributed to use the connections they have to continue advocating for her. We have to see her released. We have to see her get back home. It is really a shame on us all as an ummah that she's in jail because unlike Jamal al-Amin's case, this case is really in the wheelhouse of the Pakistani government, and we all have influence in that, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. If we sign up from Tennessee to for the Zoom session for our representative, then who will be representing us? Because not everyone is capable of basically talking to our representative. We don't know the details and everything.
Well, inshallah, if you sign up, we'll train you. So we have some really great materials. Number two, don't underestimate yourself. MashaAllah, the American Muslim community is one of the smartest, brightest communities in the country. So don't allow the nervousness of speaking to the big person in Congress deter you. You don't have to be an expert. You just have to be passionately committed to seeing Dr. Afiya released and express that passion when you speak to these congressional offices. We'll train you, and then also one of our staff members will be in every one of these meetings to help facilitate those conversations. If you are, mashallah, well educated, if you have, income, if you have property in America, your voice matters. Congressional members of Congress really care about what you have to say. So don't let that nervousness deter you. Show up, bring your family, bring your kids so they can see that you're advocating for Dr. Afiya's case. And again, we'll be there, we'll train you, and we'll make sure you're available. This is our first advocacy day. Our next advocacy day is going to be in January of 2022, and we're going to keep building this up until Ramadan of 2022, and you're going to start the Pakistan campaign, inshallah, maybe in 2022 as well. So this is just the first step, and again, I hope all of you can join us in the advocacy day. All of you use whatever power and ability you have to support Dr. Afiya, along with the Imam, along with CARE's work, and all the good people that are doing work all across the country. And inshallah, together we can build a better world that all of us can be proud to live in.
Okay, thank you so much to all our speakers, Sheikh Yasser, Brother Gutierrez, Sister Marwa, Brother Fazan, and to all of you again for being here. This was an amazing conversation. I know you guys probably have hundreds more questions, so don't ever hesitate to reach out to CARE chapters across the U.S. if you have questions, Brother Gutierrez, Brother Fazan, Sister Marwa. If you have questions that you would like to forward directly to them, Brother Gutierrez is here. I can take questions for Brother Fazan and Sister Marwa. And of course, Sheikh Yasser, mashallah, is a staple in our community, and he is an amazing resource as well. So again, I want to thank you guys so much. Inshallah, we'll perform Isha Salah. And then there are snacks outside as well for your convenience. Please take as much as you want. Fill your plate to the brim. And again, thank you so much for your time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum. Just on the screen, if you are interested in listening to the hearing and following the hearing live on that day, you can inshallah follow it on that link. There will also be a rally in front of the Supreme Court on that day as well after the press conference, if you're interested, inshallah.